Hi, I'm L.A. Girlfriend, and you're watching my interview with Hype Nation. I started playing music in 3rd grade, and guitar was my first instrument. But before then, music just was always around the house. So it was always just in my peripheral, and as far as like playing, guitar was the first thing that drew me to music performance-wise. And then after that, I went to drums and bass and piano, and that's largely in part to my brother, who's also a musician. And since he's older, whatever instrument he would be done with, he'd kind of like let me play with it. And so it was just kind of like a chain reaction of just us always cycling out instruments. And then in high school, that's when I started doing solo performances. I tried doing acoustic guitar kind of stuff, but I don't know, it wasn't like edgy enough for me. So I went into more distortion and like noise. And my first project, it was kind of like the baby version of L.A. Girlfriend, meaning it was very there's a lot of electronics to it. It wasn't as refined, meaning I had a big problem trying to edit down my sounds. So it was just like a million things all at once because I loved all these instruments and I wanted all of them playing. But of course, when they all play, then it just gets like really crowded and noisy. So as far as like my editing muscle, it wasn't developed quite yet. So from there, it took me about a few years to kind of learn how to, pare stuff down and then like discover new sounds using actual instruments, like meaning synths and stuff, instead of just purely electronic sounds. And then L.A. Girlfriend came to be 2011, and that was kind of like the point where I just told myself, like, yeah, I can do it. It's cool. I know how to write a good song, so I'm just gonna try it for real this time. And 6 years later, here we are. So yeah, that's it. When it comes to live performances, I try to recreate my sound as close to the recording as possible, but the element that I inject to it live is just the performance aspect. I believe that when people come to a show, like, you know, they work hard for their money, they pay for a ticket, so give them something to remember. And so that's why I don't just, you know, have a traditional band setup. As far as like this iteration of live show, which is most likely my like one I feel good about, that I'll probably stick with for a while. This iteration not only has dancers, but it has like a bassist, and I'm playing guitar. I have another guitar player. So as far as like transitioning from studio to a live performance, I try to keep it really similar. I try not to stray from the track. Of course, that brings some difficulties, because when you're doing a live show, you want it to feel like big, and you want it, you know, you want the bass to be felt in your heart, kind of thing, which is hard to do without a live drummer. But that's kind of been my, I always go back and forth with having like a live drummer versus a drum machine. Guitar is probably my favorite to do live, and I do bass as well, but that's more of like an in-studio thing, because I do have a bass player and he's amazing and he's just fun to watch. So yeah, I tend to take on guitar, keys, and then sometimes drum pad, but very rarely, because I like to be like purely out front performance mode and move around and stuff like that. Writing's a funny thing, because I've always approached songwriting kind of like a journal, and so a lot of my songs are reflective of personal events and experiences. But the experiences I do have and the ones that I do write on happen to be subjects that a lot of people relate to, so I think that's why just organically people connect with my stuff really easily, and that's cool. But as far as like getting into the writing and then pairing it with the song, it's interesting, because some people do the words first and then they pair it to music. However, I go backwards, so I'll produce a song full start to finish, and then depending on what the mood of the song is, then I will then think like, oh, this feels like a love song, or this feels like a sad song. But my songs always start with good intentions to be a romantic thing, but then it always goes into like some sad, like broken-hearted, like dance riff. And I don't know why that happens. I guess I'm just more comfortable with, the sadness of love and relationships. I definitely have more experience in that, sadly, but I don't know, that I think that's why my music's fun to play and it's fun to listen to, is because I pair sad stuff with like happy dance beats, so it's this weird contrast that people kind of gravitate towards. Videos are fun because my approach to it is to make it unexpected, because I'm sure you've listened to a song before and you can close your eyes and visualize, if it's a love song, then you're like, oh, like I see people running in a meadow, I see like a couple. But what I like to do is listen to a song and then take it in the opposite direction of what it is or what it could be. And a good example of that is the video I did for my song 84. It's really kind of like rough and aggressive, but the video is of my like 8-year-old cousin at the time, just like walking around town in a leather jacket. So it's just like adding these different elements that make it a little uncanny or like a little different, but then giving it a new, like giving the song a new life in that sense. So it has like, you know, when you listen to the song, you hear it one way and you visualize it one way, but then when you watch the video, it becomes this whole other thing. So in terms of video, that's kind of how I approach it. But as far as like how everything's branded, that's really done on instinct and what I feel is what's the word? I feel like when I close my eyes and think of L.A. Girlfriend, I think of her as this very like edgy, cool, yet nice, warm, loving person. And so whenever I do my branding or videos or photos, I try to like match it to that type of vibe, because that's how it started. Like I wanted her to be this alter ego of sorts, so all of it's kind of like, how do I become more of her, or how do I make her more real? But as far as doing everything myself, I think if you have a vision for your project and you're gung-ho about it and you have the skills to do it yourself, show the world what that vision is and just go for it. I think so many people get stuck in feeling like their ideas or their vision needs to be validated by others. But then also some people just need help with like, how do I visualize my music? I was fortunate enough, thankfully, to grow up as a performer. I was a ballerina for 10 years. And then I went to art school. I'm a graphic designer. I've done like art direction and creative direction. So all these little skills I picked up along the way, thankfully have like all come back to this project in one way or another. So in that sense, I'm very grateful for just how my life's progressed and all the things I have learned. They've allowed me to do everything myself. But as all musicians hopefully get to this point where like they can only go so far, and then you have to start including other people. So that's why now I have like a really good team around me, and they're really stoked about what I'm doing. And so when they're stoked, like they get other people stoked, and it just kind of like keeps growing and growing and growing. So